I am the events coordinator here at Books Are Magic. We are so excited to have our favorite author, former co-worker, writer extraordinaire Camryn Garrett, and our dear friend Christina Lee here with us tonight to celebrate the forgotten summer of Seneca. I just have a few housekeeping notes to go over before we start. We'll be doing a hand raised Q&A at the end of the night. Think of your questions. Hold on with them tight. I will make Cam answer them. Afterwards, Cam will be signing and personalizing near where you checked in. We'll let you know when and where to line up for that. If you're joining us virtually in the live stream, you can buy a link. Nope, you can buy a book from the link in the. I do that every week. You can buy a book from the link in the description. If you're here, you can buy a book at the front. I don't want to shelve them afterwards because I want them to go into your hands and into your homes and order more. So please buy them all. And the book you'll be buying is The Forgotten Summer of Seneca. It is a middle grade mystery with a magical twist about a girl who goes to live with her aunt in the summer after the loss of her father, and who finds a doorway in Central Park that leads to a magically preserved historical village. Filled with sparkling magic, honest explorations of grief, moving depictions of new friendship, The Forgotten Summer of Seneca asks us to remember a history that's often overlooked and imagine a future where we're brave enough to embrace change. Isn't that just amazing? Camryn Garrett, star of tonight's show, is an NAACP Image Award nominated author and filmmaker who was born and raised in New York. She is the author of 4 novels. And I don't have a mic in my hand.
It's okay.
She's the author of 4 novels, and her work has been translated into 9 languages. Camryn has also written and directed several short films. You can find her on X, formerly Twitter, at Dancing of Pens, posting too much from a laptop named Stevie. Christina Lee, our conversation extraordinaire, whose books we also have tonight for you to purchase, is the award-winning author of children's and young adult books, including Ruby Lost and Found, which we have here tonight for you to purchase. She graduated from Stanford University and grew up in the Midwest and California, but now resides in New York. The Manor of Dreams is her adult literary debut and comes out next month. Without any further delay, please join me in the warmest welcome to Cam and Christina.
I'm so excited to be here with you tonight. First of all, congratulations.
Thank you.
I love this book. I'm so excited for it to be out in the world. My first question is always, in your words, like, tell us what the book is about and what the story is behind the book.
I feel like Bex's introduction of the book was way better than anything that I could say. Yeah, it's about a girl named Rowan who goes to stay with her aunt for the summer, and while she's messing around in Central Park, she finds a portal that transports her to this magically preserved version of Seneca Village. Mm-hmm. And I guess before I should explain what Seneca Village is, if you don't know what it is. Before Central Park existed, there was Seneca Village, and it was a village of about, I don't want to say how many people, I will mess that up, but it was made of primarily free Black people. There were also German and Irish immigrants who lived there, and the city actually used eminent domain to tear it down so that they could make Central Park. And there's like a complicated and long history surrounding all of that. The Central Park Conservancy is actually doing programming for the 400th anniversary of Seneca Village, which is really exciting. Yeah. But that was sort of where the idea generated.
Yeah. And one thing I loved about the book was just how vivid the history was and how detailed it was. Could you walk us through the process of doing research? What, when you first thought of the idea and were like, it's historical, like where did you start and how did your process change throughout?
Yeah, I first had the idea a few years ago. I tried to write it as a YA first.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that. Yeah.
Yeah, we're uncovering gems together.
Yeah, truly.
But I read an article in the New York Times by Brent Staples. It was an opinion piece, and he talked about like forgotten Black village or like dreams of a Black utopia, something along those lines. Yeah. And it was about Seneca Village, and I didn't know it existed, and I thought it was really, really cool. And then he did a follow-up about 2 years later. Yeah. And I tried to write it as a YA. Actually, I asked people for advice on how to write a fantasy because I primarily write contemporary, and it just didn't fit. It didn't work. And then I tried it again as a middle grade. I sort of got into a middle grade era, and I kept reading tons of middle grade, and I felt like it really fit that way. Yeah. Because absolutely. I feel like a younger character on one hand can be more jaded but also have more hope and be a little bit more open to those things as opposed to like a 16-year-old who I don't know would have the faith.
Yeah.
It's sort of like in Narnia where like Lucy is the one who believes and then the other siblings are like, you're so dumb. I felt she had to be a little bit younger to sort of believe in that.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
am I even answering?
No, your answer. Wait,
Okay.
I now have more questions.
Yes.
Like, well, tell us about YA Rowan and like, how did she first come to you, and at what point were you like, this must be a younger character?
She wasn't named Rowan. I don't remember her name.
Oh, okay.
Which tells you how well that draft went. I did not get that far into the YA draft because it just wasn't fitting. It felt like trying to like force a peg into the wrong shaped hole.
Yeah.
I feel like I don't know how much the audience is familiar with like YA fantasy.
Yeah.
But you know, like I think generally YA fantasy, the stakes are different. They're a little bit higher.
Yeah.
And I figured the story would have to be way different. If she were older. If it were younger, I felt like I could do this sort of quiet, like Miyazaki-inspired story about grief and about all these things happening in her life and about change. Whereas I felt like if she were older, there would have to be a love interest. There would have to be like a villain, like a very clear villain, like some evil, like person, like a wizard. I don't know. Like I thought
that would be
a
very different book.
Very different. There would have to be a battle, a war. Like I didn't want to do all of that stuff. And I was reading a lot of middle grade, and I feel like that was a space where she could sort of be like a quiet character who's really internal.
Yeah. I feel like one of the things I love about middle grade, like reading and writing middle grade, is that ordinary acts of magic just happen.
Yeah.
And it's just like accepted. Like I think you're still at the age where you believe that, you know, there can just like these like things that happen, but it's just like very, very accepted. It's very normalized. And, you know, that's not the thing that's like the conflict of the book, right? Like the conflict itself is like other things. But yeah, wait, I love hearing about that journey. I'm like, I thought I knew like everything there is to know. And yeah, so how, you know, I love the middle grade voice in this book. I love how it sounds like, I was telling you yesterday, I was like, it sounds like, you know, Rebecca Stead and like all these like classics that I grew up reading. How did you form your middle grade voice, and which books or like what books kind of stood out to you, or did you want to like draw inspiration from when you were writing this?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think Rebecca Stead is a really big inspiration for me. She wrote When You Reach Me.
Yeah. Also a New York book. Yeah.
Yes, a very, very New York book. And it feels really old. Like I remember when I read When You Reach Me for the first time in elementary school, thinking it was as old as A Wrinkle in Time.
Yeah.
I thought they were published around the same time because it felt that way. And I read all of her middle grade books, and I loved, again, they felt like very contained, but they have these really big themes.
Yeah.
One of her books is about like a boy who essentially befriends like a liar.
Yeah.
Like another little boy who cannot stop telling him lies. And he keeps being like, that's not cool. But like they're still friends. And I think something like that seems so small, but there's so many different themes that are around that. And I really was inspired by that. I just really loved Elizabeth Enright, who published mainly like in the 50s. One of her books is called The Saturdays, and I love it so much. And it's about these 4 siblings who live in a mansion in Manhattan, because it's the 50s. And they I don't even remember where in Manhattan, but I was just like so taken out of the story by that. And all of them, their father gives them like 10 cents for their allowance. And they're like, if we pool our allowances, all of us can do something really fun on a Saturday. And so one of them goes to the opera, one of them goes to the circus, one of them gets her hair done, and then her father calls her a hussy. It's a whole thing. So obviously that wasn't in the book directly, but I really loved her voice. It's very frank and very like she's not speaking down to the reader.
Yeah.
And I tried my best to emulate that. I was really nervous about the voice. And my agent was like, you're doing great.
Yeah.
So I tried my best.
Honestly, sometimes the middle grade voice just like comes. Like it just comes out. And one thing that I love about middle grade as well is just, the characters are so honest.
Definitely.
And they're like, I call it like I see it, like whatever I'm feeling, I'm expressing that.
Definitely.
And so I feel like in many ways it's like it's not like easy, but it's like it comes.
Yeah.
Like
it's before you're learning to like not express your emotions
Yes,
to function in
exactly.
society
Yeah,
and being very deep.
right.
But
right,
like
right. No,
I
love this.
think that's really interesting
This.
about middle grade, where they're at the age where they notice it's not really cool to say how you feel all the time, and it's not cool to cry, and it's not cool to be emotional in public, and sort of struggling with that.
Yeah.
And having these really honest feelings that they're not sure what to do with.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of feeling and emotions, I really loved the way that you portrayed the very complex emotions that Rowan feels this summer. One of the things that I, particularly loved reading about was just like these complicated feelings around like she's coming back to a place that she loves. She is staying with her aunt, which used to be so fun, but her life is not the same after the loss of her father. And like she now has to deal with the reality of this grief while being in a place that she used to love, but it's not the same anymore. So how did you navigate, I think, the emotional arc in this story? And kind of did it play out for Rowan the way that you had imagined at the beginning?
I definitely think it did. I was really interested. The story for me is about her emotional journey. And I'm really interested in moments in childhood. I'm saying childhood, I mean like even now in my 20s, where like you have these moments where you start realizing you're Kylie Jenner realizing things. But like what I mean by that is like I feel like there are these moments where, kind of like in a video game, where like the game starts automatically saving and you know something is about to happen.
Okay.
These moments you kind of can't turn back from.
Yeah.
So for her, obviously that's her father passing away, and that changes everything.
Yeah.
But it can be anything, and it's realizing about these like big things that are happening in the world that you didn't notice before.
Yeah.
Realizing that your parents don't know everything, even if you think they know everything. Learning about friendship groups, all sorts of things. So for Rowan, it's really about this loss and learning how to live and like navigate that loss.
Yeah.
And I really wanted to write. When I was younger, I felt like every book for young kids, there was dead parents. There were never parents around. And I really wanted to grapple with this idea of grief because it's so present, especially now. But I just think it's just so present throughout life.
Yeah.
And I think it's something that we as a society aren't really equipped to deal with. And I thought it's especially important to write about it for children, where it can feel so isolating.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like there's a lot of kids that are going to draw comfort from that, because everyone has, a lot of individual experiences of grief. And also like going back to the honesty of it, like I think in middle grade especially, characters expressing their grief in such an open and forthcoming way is like really great. Like when I read books and characters are like openly expressing these emotions, it really helps me as well, like categorize my own experiences and everything.
Definitely.
So kind of staying on that topic, but like casting a wider net, I think there's a lot of changes that are happening, right? Like in Rowan's life, there is her friend groups are changing, like her friends are not hanging out with her as much anymore because of like different circumstances. Clearly her family structure is very different these days. And one thing that I really I think loved reading about is the process of like that paralleling with the loss of neighborhoods in New York that used to be the way they are, and the loss of like Seneca Village. And was that intentional when you were writing, like just kind of like paralleling these very personal? Oh, okay. I was like,
no, it wasn't. Like... It wasn't. I mean, I feel like we've talked about this a lot. Like I used to love writing a first draft. That was before I knew anything. And I would be like, this is the best thing ever. And now I've been edited, so I kind of know all the things that are going to be wrong right away. And I don't have the full story in the first draft. So I sort of have, beat by beat. She's going in the magical village. She is, great. Yay.
Yeah.
But as far as like parallels or like big messages, I'm not always sure how to get that across. So that came out later, I feel like. I don't know. My editors might be like, that's not right. But I think
that was an editorial
it's something that you notice as you're editing or as you're going through. And I feel like that's the case for a lot of my books. I might have, like for this, I wanted to explore grief. I wanted to explore change, but I didn't realize how those could be connected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. I love when you're like cooking, but like you don't even realize you're cooking, you know?
Exactly. I'm locked in.
You're locked in. All right. Well, this is your first middle grade.
Yes.
How does the process differ from writing young adults? And if so, how does it differ?
For me, I was just way more present and noticing voice way more. So for YA, I feel like I know the voice right away, and I kind of just dig in. And with this, I hadn't written middle grade before, so I was very, very conscious about it. And I sort of was thinking, like, overanalyzing. Okay, if this is third person omniscient, like, what should the narrator know?
Yeah.
Who is the narrator? What would they sound like? And that was something. Usually, I draft really quickly, and I feel like that was something I kept thinking about. It didn't feel like any shorter than writing a YA, honestly, even though it is shorter, obviously. Yeah. But I think the process went by faster, oddly. Maybe it just felt that way. But I feel like I could see the full book taking form way faster than I do with a YA.
Yeah. I feel like I also feel similarly about drafting middle grade. It's like it just kind of comes out of me, and then like it comes out in a complete way. Whereas for YA, I'm like jumping back and forth. I'm like stressing. Like
I'm not stressing with YA.
Oh, okay. Well, love that for you.
I'm jumping back and forth on YA, but like a teen's voice, maybe because that's more recent.
Yeah,
just feels so easy, and like there are teens everywhere. I mean, of course there's 12-year-olds everywhere, but like teens, I feel like the voice is so like I know that voice. And then middle grade, I hated middle school, so I'm like I have to unlock these memories.
True. I felt like I was reliving middle school trauma when I was writing about like friendships growing apart. I'm like, oh my god.
I remember like looking up like common themes in middle grade, and it's like friendships breaking apart, and I was like, well, we're going to skip past that. Like we're not doing that. I don't want to deal with that. She's going to stay with her aunt, so we don't have to deal with friends. Because some things I just couldn't handle doing again.
Yeah, that's true. We cannot.
It's too much.
Speaking of other friends and other characters, I really love your side characters.
Thank you.
How did you come up with them? Like, I mean, I could go in so many directions, like her aunt, like Lily, like all the side characters in Seneca Village, even the cat. Titular cat. How did they come to you? Do they come with, like, do their voices come with the voice of your main character's voice, or do they kind of like appear later in the process?
Lily becomes Rowan's friend. She's the first person she meets when she goes to Seneca Village. Lily I kind of knew from the beginning because I knew there would be this character who sort of represented all of the magical things about the village that she had to meet. So I knew she had to be sort of bubbly and exciting and like really like just amazing right off the page. And I was trying really hard with that. With her aunt, I wanted that to be another sort of like opposite ends of like really cool person. So like her aunt is more grounded in New York City, and her aunt's like, I used to live in Harlem and I went to NYU. Shout outs. And what else? Her aunt's like sort of been all over the place and knows so much about New York City. And then on the other end is Lily, who is like, yeah, this is what Seneca Village is like. Why don't you know that? Like, you should know that. I really wanted those people who, I feel like in a lot of movies, there's always a character who is like, now let me tell you about like what this place is like. And I wanted them both to be like that. Kat, I feel like didn't come in until later. There's a cat named Kat, and I just was really like, I need a cat in a book.
That's so fair.
I was really inspired by Claribel Ortega, who had this cat in her books. And the cat's on the cover. And I was like, I love this cat so much. I need my own like titular cat.
Right.
And then my sister, when she was little, had a stuffed pig named Cat. And I was like, that innovation. So like, let's use that. And that
drawing inspiration.
Yeah. But I feel like it's not conscious. Like for me, especially if I'm drafting and I draft so fast, a lot of it just comes out.
Yeah.
And then I have to be like, people are gonna be mad at me, like if I took this. And I didn't think it was a big deal.
Yeah. I have a friend who's like begging me to use her cat in every single book. Like she's like, please use my cat. And like
I'll use the cat.
Does the cat want to be in a haunted house? Like like we need to.
The cat can live, or like the cat can see dead people.
The cat can see. It's true. Yeah. We can pass this cat around. We can like
we'll all have the cat.
We'll all share this.
Everyone has this cat.
Exactly. But yeah, that was one of my favorite characters from the book. speaking of Lily, how did you form? I love the way that she like spoke in complete sentences.
Yes.
She was like,
I'm glad you noticed that. Okay,
yeah,
yes.
absolutely. How did that voice, or like were you like, I must speak in like a grammatically
I was just trying to
historically
figure
accurate?
out. It was really hard to do. I mean, we talked a little about research, but honestly,
Yeah.
it's hard to do research about Seneca Village because we don't have a ton of
Mhm.
information about it. And people like historians, archivists, archaeologists are doing a lot to try to find out more, but like we don't know any of the families who like lived there,
Yeah.
like the descendants. So some of it I had to make up, and I was trying to find like records of like what they would sound like, what they would talk like, and I had no idea.
Yeah.
And I figured it was a magical version of olden times. And I was like,
Yeah.
how would a 12-year-old imagine olden times? So
Yeah.
they would speak in full sentences with no contractions. I
Mhm.
feel like that's what a 12-year-old would come up with.
Yeah. Totally.
And I just thought it would be really funny if there's like an 11-year-old like frolicking around, like speaking with perfect grammar.
Yeah.
Perfect grammar. I don't know if the copy editor
No,
would agree with
no.
that. But I was very specific about it because I wanted to be like readers to be able to identify the differences between the way Lily speaks and the way Rowan speaks.
Yeah. I also loved how well they were able to communicate. Like it's like even though Lily spoke in full sentences and didn't use contractions, like she didn't sound antiquated, if that makes sense. Like they sounded like they were having conversations.
I feel like there are books that do this really well, like do historical fiction for kids really well,
Yeah.
and have like really accessible writing.
Mhm.
But I knew that I couldn't have her sound like too antiquated because I don't think it would be accessible.
Yeah. And then it would be more about like
it would be like kids. Like I could just picture kids being like, ugh, like just looking at the speech and like not getting into it.
Yeah, that makes sense. No, I do love how accessible the history is in
Yeah.
this book. And I feel like this book is a really good way to like learn history because it's fictional, but it feels very real, feels very vivid, it's very detailed, and it clearly shows a lot of historical research. In the research you were able to find, were there any facts that you were like, this is so cool, like I must include it in this book?
Just the concept of like all these free Black people like having this area where they were living. This is post-slavery, I believe. So I just thought it was really cool. I thought it was really cool that they were living. I mean, obviously our racial identities have shifted and aren't the same anymore. But I thought it was really cool that they were living with like Irish and German immigrants. I think in like writing about Seneca Village, we're like, oh, it's this all Black town, and it was mostly Black, but they were like white people living there.
Yeah.
And our concept of white is different. But I thought that was very cool. They had a church, they had a school. All the people who lived there, oh my goodness, a lot of the people who lived there were able to vote, so they owned a property.
Oh.
The men.
Okay. Yeah.
So they owned a property.
Right.
And it was just a lot of them worked service jobs and were able to own their own homes in this area.
Yeah.
And I just thought it was very cool and very normal. Some of the like artifacts we do have are like teapots and like crockery and things like that, and it just felt really normal.
Yeah.
And I just loved the idea of like real people being there.
Yeah.
Like New Yorkers.
Yeah. I love the imagery of like them making like peach jam. I don't know. For some reason I was like, that's so cool. Like they were
and
just
now I'm like
jam.
Meghan Markle on the brain. I'm like, this is so
yeah, right. Like we're all like canning our own food.
Exactly.
And, like, making our own.
I just loved the idea, and then also connecting it sort of to like Southern like lineage where like they're doing this. I'm like the Great Migration and all these sort of different things that I wanted to put in the book, but I was like, this is a little bit much like info dump.
Yeah. I love it. I would read the extended the
I just
director's
think
cut.
it's so interesting. I went to, there was an exhibit at the Met, and again, like it was like Afrofuturist. And I think they still have it in a room, but it's a lot of like artists being like, this is what I think Seneca Village would be like. And they have some of the artifacts there.
Yeah.
And I think it's really interesting that it's just sort of like a concept for people.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it can sort of be what you'd like it to be to some extent.
And where were you directing your research towards like the artifacts that, you were able to find? Was it like the Met exhibit, or like did you talk to, read books, or...
The Central Park Conservancy was really, really good. They have a lot of resources about it. And then a lot of like CUNY resources. So like CUNY and Columbia have like sponsored a lot of like archaeological digs. Specifically like the Schomburg Center for Black History. Up in Harlem, and then just so many like like CUNY.
Yeah.
And I just felt like such a nerd reading through all of it, but it was so cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like this history is so cool, but like you said, it's very like hidden, and I feel like it's very local. Like
It's pretty local, yeah.
live near, I think, where a lot of the signs and like markers for parts of Seneca Village are. So I was able to like learn that, but I feel like it's not, as easy for someone who like doesn't live in my direct neighborhood or like is not, exposed to it. And so I guess, do you have any thoughts on like what you wish was accessible to students, like for this to be in history books, or
I
like
think it would be so cool if like a New York students were able to visit it or talk about it. I know I grew up on Long Island, so it's a little bit different, but like we went to like Iroquois, like I don't think there were reservations, but like we visited where Iroquois lived. We learned a lot about like who lived there before us, and I feel like that like localized learning is really interesting. We have Weeksville in Brooklyn. We're in Brooklyn. But like further Weeksville, which is like another sort of like historical area. I cannot speak. Historical area. I think it'd be really interesting if there was like more of a area around where Seneca Village is. It's a little hard because Central Park is there.
Right, like it's like
but I know the Conservancy is doing a lot of like programming around that, which I think is really cool too. If it's something that like New York City public schools get a pamphlet or something or a coloring sheet. I don't know. I think that could be really cool.
Yeah. I feel like I almost wanted to also be in like AP US history books, like I feel I would have loved, like, even if I wasn't from New York or any, like I would have loved to read a section about
I think
this.
that's no, I totally agree. I think that's amazing, but I just don't know if that's happening now.
Yeah, no, that's
I would have loved that. Like I would have written a research paper about it or something in high school or college. Just to know, I mean, Black like enclaves in general, like Black neighborhoods, Black areas are so interesting, and their books, like oh my gosh, what's the gigantic Isabel Wilkerson book?
Oh my gosh, yeah,
I read that. The Warmth of Other Suns, which is like she follows different families through the Great Migration. It's so interesting.
I love that book.
It's so big.
Yeah.
And I love stories about that. I think sometimes it's easy to feel disconnected from history, especially if you don't know that much about like your own family's history. So reading so much about like Black migration is really interesting way to connect with other people.
And just like even reading it through like a fictional lens, like it's like you're like connecting to these protagonists. Definitely. And like okay, a bit of a fun question for you. Let's say there was like a Freaky Friday situation. And Rowan and Lily woke up in each other's lives. How would they go about their days? Like, what would they do?
To reiterate for the audience, Rowan is the main character who lives in our world, and Lily lives in Seneca Village. I think, oh my god,
I want like a detail.
Lily would have a panic attack because she wouldn't. I don't know if she would know the first thing to do. She would hear like a phone alarm and be freaked out. Because in Seneca Village they don't have these things.
It's like a diet, like a Mountain Dew would kill you.
Oh my gosh, a Mountain Dew would kill a Victorian child. No, exactly. She would be like, "What is this? Can I eat this? Like, what's going on?" And I feel like whoever is in charge of taking care of her would be so exhausted.
I mean, the aunt, right?
The aunt, this poor aunt. And I think Rowan would. I feel like because Rowan's been to Seneca Village, she would be a little bit different. I think she would definitely be like constantly, what's the word? Like taking stock of things. She has this camera. I feel like she'd be taking pictures constantly. Probably have a meltdown when her film ran out. She'd be like taking notes. In the book, she asked so many questions, and the other kids seem kind of annoyed with her. They're like, "What do you mean? Like, why don't you know this?"
Yeah, that's true.
I think she would probably like to go to their school. Like they have a schoolhouse in the book. I think she'd probably really enjoy that. And I also think she's like one of those kids who latches onto authority figures. So if she found a teacher, she'd be like, "Yes, I'm going to like
we're going to learn."
Exactly.
Yeah, I love that. Wow.
Freaky Friday.
I feel like they would have a fun time in each other's lives.
After a bit. Yeah. An adjustment phase.
I'm just trying to think of Lily going to Times Square. And like,
I thought she would lose it.
Her mind a little
but she
bit.
would be so excited, like after she had like a meltdown.
Yeah. And she'd proceed. Yeah, very cool. Okay, I like thought of all these questions off the top of my
You're
head.
doing
and I was
amazing.
Like, now
You're doing
to the
great.
questions I wrote down. Okay, so we have been friends for many years.
We have.
Over 10 years at this
Oh my
point,
gosh.
which is, wow. I know, it's kind of crazy. And now we're here.
Now we're here. Who would have thought?
Who would have? Yeah,
You
actually,
know?
yeah,
Who would have
who would have
thought?
thought? How we've been in publishing for so long, like how has that journey changed? Like how have you changed as a writer? You know, when you first started writing, like I don't know if you envisioned writing middle grade books, but like, yeah, like
It's a good question.
did
I
you
first
start?
started writing seriously when I was 14.
Yeah.
So middle school was like right there.
Yeah,
And I was like,
yeah.
I don't want to think about middle school. I'm
Yeah,
not writing
that's
middle
true.
grade. And I didn't think about middle grade for a long time because I didn't read that much middle grade when I was the actual age. I was kind of one of those kids who jumped from kids' books to adult books.
Yeah.
And I think there are a lot of kids like that. So I didn't read a lot of middle grade till I was an adult. And I really
me
loved
too.
it. Like,
Yeah.
I kept avoiding it because I was like, I can't go back to middle school. I can't think
Mm-hmm.
about this. But it was just so beautiful. And I really wanted to write like the writers I picked up.
Yeah.
I don't think I saw myself writing middle grade. I got the first book deal and did not imagine anything after that. I was like, I am set.
Yeah, me too.
Nothing else is ever happening.
Yeah.
This money
where the
is
timeline
gonna
ends.
stay in the bank account,
Mhm.
and books will
Right.
write themselves. Like, I was not thinking that far ahead.
Yeah.
I think younger me would be really excited.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't expect any of this to happen.
Yeah, honestly.
I don't know. Do you feel the same way?
I feel the same way in that my goal for my whole life was like, I just want to write a book. I want to publish a book.
No,
And I remember when we were like back then becoming friends on Twitter, being like, wow, like I'm working on this, like I want
Yeah.
to publish. And it was so good to find you as a friend
Yeah.
and like as someone who was.
Weren't we both like in Teens Can Write Too?
We were like in teens. We were
Teens Can Write Too. Shout out.
We were in so many teens.
Our friend set up a website called Teens Can Write Too. We will not name the friend. There was like a community that sort of like built around that website, and it was a bunch of teens being like, "Yes,
we can
write."
write.
And I think a lot of us got published, right?
I think so. Yeah. Like I mean, I don't know. Like for me, I was like, oh my gosh, like a teen. Like I'm a teen. I need to be like published as a teenager. And like
Me
I had
too.
all
Me
these
too.
like
Yeah.
wild. And
It was so weird. I remember my teacher being like, "Who's telling you this?" Like,
right, like our
Who's making
minds
you
were
do
like
this?
really locked into degrees in which they did not
know
have to be.
why.
locked in.
I really don't understand. I think I thought my life would be over.
Like,
But it's again, like I love rediscovering
mhm,
all of this over and over again.
mhm.
Like you have ideas about certain phases of life, and then they're so different.
Yeah.
And I keep talking about this. I did a school visit, and I was like, "Do you guys know Billy Joel?" Because I really relate to Billy Joel. And like, I was like, "Don't you think it's so beautiful that like music that was written before I was born is so relatable to what I'm feeling right now?"
Yeah.
And like, they did not care. Like,
Oh,
they didn't know who Billy
wait.
Joel was. They did
Oh my
not
God.
care. I was singing "We Didn't Start the Fire," and they were staring blankly at me. But I feel that way.
Yeah.
Like, especially looking back at our old work. Like,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
never would have imagined any of this would have happened.
That's true.
And my
That's
idea
true.
of being 25 is so different from the reality.
Yeah,
But it's
totally.
like so cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I trust these kids will discover Billy Joel in like
I don't
5
know.
years.
I
No,
don't
they'll
know.
have the same revelation you will, and they'll be doing their school visits, and they'll be like, "Have you guys heard of Billy Joel?" And the cycle will continue. All right. Okay. Last question from me,
Yeah.
and then I would love to turn it over to the audience, which is also your cue to start thinking of questions. What are you excited to work on these days, and what are you excited, and what's coming for you, and what's next?
What am I excited to work on? My friend and I were writing Outer Banks fan fiction for a little bit. It was
I
just
would
like,
not have guessed that to be your
I'm
answer.
outing myself.
fun.
That stopped. No.
Wait, but yeah, exciting.
That was fun. No, it was really fun. I'm excited to work on. I'm writing an adult book.
Oh,
That's
I
fun.
love that. Okay.
I'm still at the beginning though.
Yeah.
I feel like Christina's my friend, so she knows this. But every month I'm like, I love this new idea. And then the next month she's like, how is it going? And I'm like, no, like we're on something else.
Yeah. No, because I'm a bad texter, and so I'll like check and be like, hey, how's this going?
She's like, what happened to this? And I'm like, no, like that's not going anymore.
Yeah.
So I feel hesitant to say
That's
like
okay,
I'm
that's
excited
okay.
to work on it, but I am.
Yeah,
it's really nice.
Yeah, that's so exciting. I love that for you.
And then your adult book comes out, which is really, really exciting.
Yeah, my adult book comes out
next
in
month.
like a month.
The beginning of next month.
The beginning of next month. That's true. That's true.
It's beautiful.
Also something I did not imagine.
Yeah.
Like I remember I was like coming out with like, I don't know, YA and then middle grade. I was like, here it is. But awesome. Wow. I loved getting to converse with you. Okay, I'm gonna turn it over to our wonderful audience. Does anyone have any questions? Michael.
Okay, sorry, I'm gonna ask a history question. Okay, so you were talking about how, like, we don't have a lot of memories of people who actually lived in Seneca Village, and how, like, sort of what we have is like Seneca Village is like a concept, like everyone's kind of putting their own spin on it to some extent, I think is what you were saying. I was curious, like, how you wrestled that, also maybe putting your own spin on it. Like, I know it's fiction, but like, is that historical absence and the fact that you're feeling something like that way on you, or like how were you thinking about that? To what extent did you put your own spin on it?
I was worried that like historians would read it and get mad. And that's why that's a big part of why like the magic is there, because if the magic is there then everything can be different. And also because the story doesn't work without the magic. But it's a really interesting question. I figured that I would just keep learning more. I've written books where I've had to do research, and I research the beginning, and then I keep researching, and more I find more, and I get better at researching, and I just assumed there would be more, and then there wasn't. I didn't feel bad about it because I thought if there isn't that much there, this is your great fertile ground for writers. And there are other writers who have written about Seneca Village, either in like poems or short stories. But that's also what Brent Staples' piece was sort of about, how like because there's not that much there, it's just left up to the imagination. And I thought that was a really, really interesting concept. Thank you for your question. Yes.
So I, not to expose anything, but Camryn is texting me the question of what's next. She's texting me questions about what it's like to be a playwright. So I don't know what that's about, but
can a girl be interested?
I don't know what's going on in your mind, but I'm so excited to finally read the book. I am wondering, I mean, knowing what I know about you and how you did famously grow up on Long Island, how does you are such a New Yorker, and you love cinema about New York and you love books about New York. How does it feel to write what is so intensely a New York book, and you've kind of staked your claim to a neighborhood that people don't even realize existed? But how does it feel to write a New York book?
Yeah, I really, really wanted to. I mean, even when I was growing up on Long Island, I wanted to be here. I didn't want to be there. And I love New York. And I think I've spoken to you about this. Like, I did have this very specific idea of New York and what it would look like and what it would be. And then coming here and realizing that doesn't really exist anymore. The New York from Moonstruck doesn't exist anymore.
I'm just pissed about it too.
Yeah, so like that's something obviously it's about grief and about like big things, but it's also like the New York that like you grew up watching on TV or like imagining, or even the New York I used to go visit when I was like a little kid is not the same. And I think I love the idea of people writing their own like versions of New York, and then we all get to visit them and see what the city used to be like. So I love watching like these really cheap movies from the 90s that you can tell they spent like $100 on, and I'm like, whoa, like what does this city look like? Like they are like, my rent is $25 and I live in the village, and like I work at this like video store, and I'm like, I can't believe this was ever like that. And even just like, this is so weird, but just seeing things that aren't there anymore. And I feel like that's like a visual like history, even if we don't think of it that way. I don't know if that answered your question. Thank you. Yes?
I was wondering if this got you like excited about or thinking about writing like more in sort of the genre, either like historical fiction, and like if there are other like periods that you're excited about like researching or exploring, or alternatively slash additionally like just genre fiction, because I know you've been mostly doing like more contemporary stuff.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, historical fiction is really hard. As we know. I went to an archive in Boston and I like walked in with a piece of paper and I walked into the archive and like wrote like one like reference and then left. It was just like very overwhelming. I was like, I don't know the first place to look. This is so scary. And for historical fiction, I have tried to write just straight historical fiction. I get so caught up on every little detail before I start writing, and it's really hard for me to like actually get into the writing. So I'm like, what would she be wearing? And who would be like there when she wakes up in the morning? And how is she getting breakfast in the morning? And where is she going to school? If she is going to school, where would it be? Like there's so many little details just in that opening image. I feel like it's really hard, and I love reading historical fiction, and I'm always so like surprised that people can synthesize all of that research into writing. I've tried to write it where like I write it like a contemporary book and then go back and edit it, and that doesn't work. It's really hard to do. And I liked that this was sort of a happy medium. Like I could do that, but also not. I'm interested in more magic, but my friend who's not here she read like an early draft of this and she was like, what's your magic system? You haven't defined your magic system. And I was like, I don't know what that means. Like, I don't care. I was like, can't the magic just be there? And she was like, no, that's not how that works. So I feel like there are rules. I mean, like with any genre, which we've talked about, like any genre has rules, and I feel like really nervous about those rules and breaking those rules when I'm sort of still new to a genre. That's a long way to say maybe. I really love like magical elements in a story. I was talking to my friend about like Turning Red, where it's like an allegory for puberty, for your first period, but it's something that's like making kids laugh, and it's a panda, and oh my gosh, like that's so different. And I feel like that's a really cool way to Trojan horse your way into like normal issues that kids are dealing with. But I can never think of something that, besides this, like I can't think of anything. I'm always like, what if she spoke to animals? But that's been done already. Like that's every single thought that I have, and it's really hard to think of something that sticks. I've rambled at every question. You're all so kind. Yes.
So I am a middle school English teacher and so excited about your new book.
Thank you.
And I already added When You Reach Me to my
Yes,
read
it's so
list.
good.
What other 6th, 7th, 8th graders, what book do I like have to add to my classroom library? What do you think?
Ruby Lost and Found by Christina Lee. It's really good. It's also about grief in a different way, and it's like about a scavenger hunt in San Francisco, which is really, really cool. Rebecca Stead. Who else? I love. You probably already have, but I love Because of Winn-Dixie. She has a new book called Ferris, because the girl's named after a Ferris wheel. Everything she writes is amazing. And then Jacqueline Woodson, I would do, yeah. So I feel like all the stuff I'm gonna say is like stuff you'd already have. I really love the Vanderbeekers, if you know them. So it reminds me of older books. It's basically about, I think, 7.
I haven't read it, but
7 or 6 children who live with their parents in Harlem. In modern day, and they sort of get into all these hijinks. So the first book is like their landlord saying, I'm kicking you out, and them all being like, let's be nice to him and he'll let us stay. And it reminds me a lot of like Little Women or that sort of thing. And then the last thing I'd say is the Penderwicks, which is definitely very Little Women. I love the Penderwicks so much. But Vanderbeekers is like a new, like very diverse. I think the family's multicultural. They live in Harlem. They have all these neighbors who they're friends with. And it deals with sort of like health issues and growing up in the city and all sorts of things I really like.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
Well, I was a bit inspired by Christina's question before. if you had to Freaky Friday with one of your characters, which one?
That's a good one. Probably not Rowan because she's going through a lot. Who's going through the least amount of stuff?
Yeah, who's not going
Probably the girl in my first book, Simone. She's HIV positive, but her medication controls it, and her dads are really cool, and she lives in San Francisco. I don't know how they afford it. Was not thinking about that. And she has a boyfriend who's cool, and she likes musicals. I would do that. Yeah. I don't know if she'd like my life. But
she gets to be a cool author. Like, what?
I don't know. She's like way more like she has a stronger personality than me. I don't know if she would like be into all the ways I navigate my life.
The systems in place.
Thank you.
That's a good question.
So I would love to know, before you developed the idea for this book, did it just hit you one day that, this is quite a departure where you're talking about magic portals and dealing with grief and Seneca Village. Just kind of walk us through how this came to be.
Yeah, a lot of times for me, I have like different, I call them snippets, and they're kind of just lurking around, and then I try to connect them. So for this, I knew Seneca Village, and I didn't know how to do Seneca Village. Like, I think the YA, there was like a mystery, her dad was missing. I don't remember, but that didn't work. And I was thinking magic would be the way in, and I was trying to think of comp titles. Like, what's a book that has done something similar? And I was thinking of Narnia, because I love Narnia. So I was like, okay, there will be a portal. Was there? There was not a portal in Narnia, but I was like, there will be a portal here. And that's sort of how that came together. And when I was outlining it, I wasn't really thinking about any other books. I was just sort of thinking, what would this character, it was pretty character guided. Sometimes I have books where I'm looking more at comps or I'm thinking more about plot structure, but this, I was like, what would this specific girl want out of this experience? What would get in her way? What is she dealing with? And that's sort of how it came. I was really nervous about the magical aspect, and I feel like that had to be teased out for sure. I don't know if all of it was there when I was first outlining it. And I was sort of trying to think of how little magic I could include. I was thinking a lot of like magical realism, and that's hard because magical realism is usually in adult books, like Gabriel Garcia Marquez, and I'm not him. So I was trying to think of a way to do that. And then Miyazaki movies really helped. So I wasn't even like looking specifically. I was just watching Miyazaki movies because people are like, they're amazing, and they were. And I was thinking he does that really well. Specifically, there's a movie called Kiki's Livery Service where it's magic and she's a witch, but it's really about like burnout and about like
So real.
she's like, I'm tired of doing this. And I was thinking, oh, this is really good. I want to do something like that with magic and something real. I don't know if that makes sense.
That makes sense. Thank
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
So beautiful.
It is about burnout. That's what it's about. I mean, she's like, I can't do magic anymore. I love magic. I do it all the time, but now I'm tired and I don't want to do it. And I'm like, I see myself in
this. Very real.
If that's it, are you gonna ask a question? No. Are you just being encouraging? Yeah. Okay. Is that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you to Cam and Christina for celebrating with us tonight. Thank you all for joining us. If you're still listening live stream, you can buy a copy of the book in the link in the description. If you're here, you can buy a copy of the book at the register. And my coworker is actually also, Ariana's going to go over there where Cam is going to be signing. Right there. Cam's going to be signing here, so we're going to have you line up against this wall. If you need a book, we have them. Come buy them. And also by Christina's book, we've also got Cam's backlist here. So if you want to dig a little more into her wonderful prolific writing, we've got that for you. And otherwise, we're going to pick up the chairs pretty quickly. So if you're ready to have a great night. Thank you.
Yay. Okay, I'm gonna ask them to take a